trains coming off the rails. Watch it all burn. You're safe at home. There's a lady with a beard, clowns juggling fire, elephants and donkeys. Something strong, the world is spinning, the shit show goes on. Cage puppets in a rage, and the ringleader on parade. It's a circus out here, we're wobbling on a wire. Lady with a beard, clowns juggling fire, elephants and donkeys. But know that is the truth. Get your popcorn ready and the world's still spinning. The shit show goes on.
Good morning, my fellow brothers and sisters. Today is a day that is celebrated around the world as Christmas. But who really knows the truth of Christmas? This may not be popular with many viewers, but truth is truth. A lot of people, we believe it to be celebrating the birth of Christ. But it's not. What if I told you it was a pagan holiday? What if I told you at one time it was actually illegal and you could be put in jail, imprisonment, for celebrating this paganistic holiday? We're about to dive into it. Let's go. So, why is Christmas held on December 25th? Well, according to popular tradition, Christmas is celebrated December 25th to honor the birth of Jesus. However, no records exist in the Bible or elsewhere to suggest that Jesus was actually born on this date, which raises the important question, why is Christmas celebrated on December 25th? In fact, the selection of this date has its root in both Persian and pagan traditions. Now, Jesus was probably not born in December. The Catholic Encyclopedia admits there is no month in the year to which respectable authorities have not assigned Christ's birth. There are, however, a number of reasons to suggest that Jesus was probably not born in December. Firstly, Luke 2:8 states that on the night of Jesus' birth, there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. Many scholars have agreed that this would have been unlikely in December, as shepherds would have been keeping their flocks under cover during the cold winter months, which makes a lot of sense. Many scholars have stated that shepherds would, the Good Shepherd from the early Christian catacomb of Damatilia, that's what this picture is of. Secondly, it is written in the Bible that Joseph and Mary traveled to Bethlehem to register in a Roman census, Luke 2:1-4. However, such censuses were not taken in winter when temperatures often dropped below freezing and roads were in poor condition. But pagan celebrations were happening at that time. Okay? Since it appears unlikely that Jesus was born December 25th, it raises the logical question of why Christmas is celebrated on this date. The answer points back to pagan celebrations, which occurred around the winter solstice. Two celebrations in particular took place around December 25th, Saturnalia and the birth of the sun god Mithra. Now, before we get too much further into this, the winter solstice, happens on December 23rd. December 22nd, And 3 days later, the 25th, would be Christmas Day. On the solstice, starting on the 22nd, as the sun goes down, it is the darkest for 3 days. And it stays there, and it's only within maybe 1 minute of variance that it is at its darkest point. And then on the 25th, the sun rises or is reborn again. and it gets higher and higher in the northern sky. 3 days of darkness. That almost sounds like Easter as well, where he was dead and then rose. Sounds like they're getting some things confused. So the Saturnalia festival began on December 17th. Oh, wait a minute, isn't that close to Hanukkah? That's interesting. And later expanded with festivities through to December 25th. It paid tribute to Saturn, as in Saturn worship, the black cube, the six-pointed star, or the, the agricultural god of sowing and husbandry, and was associated with the renewal of light and the coming of the new year. The holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice. Kind of like Yeshua, his real name, was sacrificed in the temple of Saturn, followed by a public banquet and private gift-giving, continually partying, and a carnival atmosphere. That's interesting. Followers of the cult of Mithra, or Mithras, which became popular among the military in the Roman Empire from the 1st century to 4th centuries AD, are believed to have celebrated his birthday on December 25th, which was the most holy day of the year for many Romans. Mithra was the sun god. Oh, the sun, the 25th. Why the 25th? Because it's 3 days after the winter solstice, and he starts to rise and get higher in the sky again. Isn't that interesting? Let us keep going, shall we? Marble carving of the god Mithra slaying a mystic bull. Or could it be Taurus? Lots of symbolism, lots of star signs that they use. The worship of the sun god Mithra, Proto-Indo-Iranian Mitra, has its origin in Persia from around 6th century BC and was later adapted into ancient Greece as Mithras. The most popular hypothesis is that Roman soldiers encountered this religion during military excursions to Persia. While it is widely accepted that the Mithraic New Year and the birthday of Mithras on December 25th were celebrated as part of the Roman Natalius Invicti festival, some scholars have argued that the Natalius Invicti was a general festival of the sun and was not specific to the mysteries of Mithras. Nevertheless, it is clear that December 25th was an important day for the Romans, and it revolved around a celebration of the Son of God, the only begotten Son, so they say, but maybe not so only begotten. But I do find it funny, there's a lot of sun worship. I mean, if Jesus is the Son of God, it's instead of S-O-N, S-U-N, sun God, as in Mithra. You start kind of understanding what's going on here. Dedication made by a priest of Jupiter. Oh, another planet that they worshipped as a god. Priest of Jupiter Dolichinas on behalf of the well-being Salus of the emperors to Sol Invictus of the genius of the military unit Equites Singularis Augusti. I wonder if that's where August got its month name from. The pagan Christian fusion, why we celebrate Christmas on December 25th when King Constantine, John Constantine, as in JC, Jesus Christ, interesting. That's where he got his face from. Converted to Christianity in the 4th century. He had quite a challenge ahead of him with regard to converting an empire full of pagans. It was therefore decided to celebrate the birth of Jesus on a date that was already sacred according to pagan traditions. So, as a compromise with paganism and in an attempt to give the pagan holidays Christian significance, it was simply decided that the birthday of the sun god would also be the birthday of the Son of God. A Catholic encyclopedia quotes an early Christian as saying, "Oh, how wonderful acted Providence, that on that day of which that Son was born, Christ should be born." Well, ain't that interesting? Now, I bet so many people are also kind of wonder, what is paganism? Like, what is it? Well, here we go. Paganism is a term that covers a great number of spiritual and religious beliefs, and someone who follows one of these beliefs is known as pagan. Some of those in ancient times who are called pagans today believed there was not just one god, but a number of gods and goddesses. Kind of like the Anunnaki. The story from Greek mythology are famous examples from a pagan religion. Pagans usually focus on spirituality and nature rather than on doctrines and dogma. Not all pagans are polytheists, belief in more than one god. Some of them are monotheists, belief in one god. The word pagan without a capital P is often used to describe anyone who holds religious beliefs that differ from the main world religions. A similar term is heathen. Today, pagan with a capital P often refers to people who follow neo-pagan religions that honor the earth. The best-known neo-pagan religion is Wicca. Another well-known neo-pagan faith is Druidism. Notice how neo-pagan is not capitalized. But there are many other neo-pagan religions with different beliefs. Now, before we get into Christmas being banned and illegal, let us talk about this individual. Good old Saint Nick, Santa Claus, Kris Kringle. Does anybody really know the roots of this individual? Where it comes from? I mean, this looks very Nordic. Well, believe it or not, this right here is a nod to a very evil individual. And his name is Krampus. Krampus, in some tales, before we get to the tales, let's get to their quote-unquote official talk about Santa Claus, or Krampus rather. This is what they say he looked like. Horns, part human, part goat. That almost sounds like ball, doesn't it? B-A-A-L. Well, every December, Santa Claus comes. This is their original, what they're trying to put out there. Santa Claus comes out and gives presents to good children around the world, according to popular culture. But according to some myths, children who have misbehaved are instead visited by a far more frightening creature, Krampus. But who is Krampus? Where do these myths come from, and why does Krampus appear around Christmas time? Krampus is a mythical creature who is often depicted with horns and a demonic-like face, according to myth, which likely originated in what is now Germany and Austria. The creature punished children who behaved badly. Krampus is also called Klaubauf Teufel or Teufel, a word that is similar to devil, or ball. Matthaus Rest, a social anthropologist at the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Germany, told Live Science in an email. Rest suspects that the name Krampus was introduced in Vienna in the 19th century, but is not certain. Traditionally, Krampus appeared on the evening of December 5th, or Krampusnacht, also spelled Krampusnacht. Jennifer Collins, a scholarly communications and reference librarian at the State University of New York, who has studied Krampus extensively, told Live Science in an email Krampusnacht came just before the feast of St. Nicholas on December 6th. In essence, Krampus is the bad cop and Santa's good cop, Collins said. Krampus would often target children who behaved badly, hitting them with a tree branch known as a switch, or even kidnapping them in a basket. Here we go. If kids were good, they wouldn't be kidnapped or swatted, and would instead wake up on the 6th to gifts from Santa. People sometimes dressed up as Krampus on December 5th to participate in events called Krampus Runs. This is particularly popular in Germany and Austria. It's not entirely clear when and how the Krampus customs began. The Krampus tradition certainly has several origins, which are located in different historical and geographical contexts. I'm not going to even try to pronounce that. A researcher in the Department of Social and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Vienna told Live Science in an email during the Enlightenment, 1685 to 1815, Krampus appeared in Vienna, where he was used as an educational tool to teach children obedience and discipline. Now, you guys can go on here to read this. This is at livescience.com. But I have I'm not going to go through the entire thing with you, but I've actually read some things that have actually stated that Krampus is Santa Claus. And that Santa, if you will, or Krampus, would entice children to come outside with toys. And when they would come outside, that's when he would kidnap them and put them in his sack and kidnap them. And they would never come home. Obviously, to eat them, that he was some kind of an evil being, evil creature. So, yeah, that's where we're celebrating this fat man on a sleigh. Not so cool. So anyways, check it out. Christmas in Scotland. This is why Scotland banned Christmas for 400 years. In 1640, it was outlawed and was only made a public holiday, Christmas Day, in 1958. Folks, that is insane. Why is that? Because of the paganistic rituals behind it? And believe it or not, it wasn't just Scotland. There was a lot of European countries that actually did outlaw it. It wasn't just them. So I definitely would advise people to come and start doing a little bit of research on Christmas. And someone actually did a really good job. We're going to kind of end this with Robert Sepehr. If you guys have not come over and seen this, Robert Sepehr does a really good at this season of Saturnalia. And Robert, I hope you're going to be all right with this, but I'm using your video, pal, so everybody can kind of get a better idea. He does a really good job explaining, and he is an anthropologist. He does a lot of research, but he's basically not just supporting what I said, but he kind of goes a little more in depth. Check this out.
Most Americans today are, and in parts of Europe, for several decades during the 1600s, by Christians themselves. In fact, all Christmas activities, including dancing, seasonal plays, games, singing carols, cheerful celebration, and especially drinking, were banned by the Puritan-dominated Parliament of England in 1644, with the Puritans of New England following suit. Christmas was totally outlawed in Boston, and the Plymouth colony made celebrating Christmas a criminal offense. Not only that, but in 1640, Scottish Parliament also passed a law that made celebrating the day illegal and punishable by imprisonment.
Whilst it's hard to believe in these times that a fairly innocuous celebration such as Christmas can be banned, in 1640 a law was passed through Scottish Parliament which made celebrating the day illegal and punishable by imprisonment. Not even mincemeat pies or Yule bread were allowed. The law was overturned in 1712, but the Church's opinion on the matter didn't really change much. That is, until 1958, when it became an official public holiday.
Christmas trees and decorations were considered to be unholy pagan rituals, and the Puritans also banned traditional Christmas foods, such as mince pies and pudding. Puritan laws required that stores and businesses remain open all day on Christmas, and town bellmen walked through the streets on Christmas Eve, calling out, "No Christmas, no Christmas." In England, when Charles II took over the throne, however, the Puritan presence remained in New England, and Christmas did not become a legal holiday there until 1856. Even then, some schools continued to hold classes on December 25th until 1870. Although the change was gradual, people began to once again embrace the holiday until Christmas as we know it today, complete with mistletoe, eggnog, and candy canes, was celebrated throughout the American colonies. That said, there were several reasons why the ban was imposed in the first place, the most notable being the parallels between Christmas and the ancient winter solstice festivities, known in pagan Rome as Saturnalia. There's nothing in the Bible that links the birth of Jesus with the month of December.
The Bible doesn't say exactly when Jesus was born, but it does offer some clues. It's worth noting that the Gospel of James says Mary gave birth in a cave, and even though it's not part of the modern canon of the New Testament, it is still relevant.
What isn't in the Bible is any indication of when this takes place. If it's December, even in the Middle East, why are the sheep out grazing in the fields at night? This doesn't happen in winter.
The best estimates for Jesus' birth, according to 9th of May or the 15th of September.
Now, my suspicion is that it was actually on 9/11. And we all know about that day. So what other way to ruin something that actually would have been sacred than with tragedy? Changing the energies and the feeling about this day forever. Just a thought.
So, If Jesus wasn't born on the 25th of December, then how did we end up celebrating this day? Well, the date of Jesus' birth wasn't the only problem that the Puritans had with Christmas. There were also a few too many similarities with Roman festivals. During the time of the Roman Empire, the end of December was full of celebrations.
You have Saturnalia, which was a gift-giving and a feasting holiday. It ran for a week from the 17th of December. At the other end, you have the Calends, the New Year holiday. It's feasting, it's processions, it's small gift-giving. There's greenery. You're beginning to see where all our elements are coming from. In the middle of those two, the 25th of December, the day of the unconquered sun, you have the solstice holiday.
It was one of the biggest events of the year. The celebration was marking the birth of a god. This god was called Mithras.
When the god Mithras is born, he emerges from a cave, which is coincidentally or not, observed by two shepherds. So there are parallels that accreted to the Christian religion from Mithraism, just as the celebratory elements accreted from Saturnalia and from the Calends.
In the northern hemisphere, the time during late December is when the days are at their shortest lengths and the nights are at their longest. For those of the pagan world, it was during the pre-Christian midwinter pagan celebrations of Scandinavia's Norsemen where today's Christmas tradition began as a means of honoring the sex and fertility god Yule with a celebration during the month of December when a large, single log, considered to be a phallic idol, was lit on fire and kept burning for 12 days, as animal or alleged human sacrifices were offered in the fire on each of those days. Wild, delirious reveling accompanied the daily sacrifices. According to the saga of King Hakon Haraldsson of Norway, who ruled in the 10th century, the Norse Yule celebration and Christian Christmas celebration were merged during his reign. Hakon became Christian after a visit to England, and after his return to Norway, he put into law that Yule should be celebrated at the same time as Christmas. Everyone was required to have ale from a measure of grain and keep the holiday while the ale lasted, or else be subject to a fine. From this point, Christmas continued to overtake Yule, although some vestiges of the original celebration remain, such as the Yule goat, an animal that pulled Thor's chariot and is now considered by many to be a companion or counterpart to Santa Claus. In towns and cities throughout Sweden during the Christmas season, large goats are constructed out of straw. The pagan calendar identifies this period as the winter solstice, after which sunlight begins to increase again, making a passage of time, which was represented by the astrological sign of Capricorn, the goat, which can still be seen in Scandinavia and Northern Europe during winter festivities, which was also referred to in Old English as Jol. The slaughter of cattle was an important part of the observance, either to gods or other supernatural beings. So meat, therefore, was plentiful for midwinter feasts, or to leave out as offerings. Capricorn the goat is also associated with Saturn, which was considered the nocturnal or black sun in a number of ancient Mesopotamian texts. And in ancient Greece, Saturn, or Kronos as he was called, was associated with time, agriculture at the end of the harvest season, and death. Which brings us to Krampus, the half-man, half-goat counterpart to St. Nicholas that has been associated with winter folklore in parts of Europe stemming from pre-Christian Alpine traditions. The etymology is thought to come from the Bavarian Kram, meaning dead or rotten, and its role has become to punish bad children or scare them into being good, often by threatening to carry them off in a sack to eat them. While Krampus may have been assimilated into the Christian devil, the symbolism speaks to a connection to the goat of Saturn, who is Kronos in Greek mythology and ate his children upon birth, representing the passage of time. Santa, representing Saturn, is the ruler of Capricorn, so he's associated with the zodiac sign of the goat. Christianity embraced the myth, which stems from the pagan midwinter celebrations such as Saturnalia, setting the birthday of Jesus to match the dozens of other saviors also said to have been born on that day. In an astrotheological context, Jesus is associated with the sun, which is born in winter, and the Saturn goat archetype represents the dark force seeking him out to destroy him because he knows the sun will grow into a savior and vanquish him in the spring.
Still are.
Farmers in ancient Rome believed that Saturn had the power to bring a good harvest, and if made angry, could destroy it. In order to receive his blessings, they held a festival named Saturnalia, and this has always been one of the most important times of the year to practice ritual sacrifice, which was also emulated by other cults, such as those devoted to Dionysus, Attis, Baal, Nimrod, and Mithras, all of whom were also born on December 25th.
So let's just take a few moments then together and try to remember, why is Christmas Day on December the 25th?
Ring, ring, ring-a-ding.
It's the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's a midwinter solstice. It's a pagan festival that's been appropriated by Christianity.
There is a great deal of truth in that. It was indeed, there's a Teutonic, Celtic and pagan view that if you survived the winter solstice on the 21st of December, you have a feast to celebrate it. But also, there was the Roman god.
Was it Saturnalia?
There was the Saturnalia was also at that time of year, but there was Mithras. He was a saviour, Mithras, sent to earth to live as a mortal, through whom it was possible for sinners to be reborn into immortal life. He died for our sins, but came back to life the following Sunday. He was born of a virgin on December the 25th in a manger or perhaps a cave, attended by shepherds, and became known as the light of the world. He had 12 disciples with whom he shared a last meal before dying. His devotees symbolically consumed the flesh and blood of him. Because Mithras was the sun god, he was worshipped on Sundays, and Mithraists gave each other gifts on December the 25th. The leader of the religion was called a Papa, and their HQ was on Vatican Hill in Rome. Well, a lot of Christian scholars have since been very angry at some of this research which came out in 1903 about Mithraists, and they claim it's nonsense. There's a great deal in Christianity that is traditional. And however wonderful people think the story is, it's frankly not original.
By looking at the Gospels through the eyes of an astronomer, we can understand why the Gospels follow the same story outline. The tale of Jesus, or of the sun, takes place within one zodiac year, which is divided into 12, the same number as Jesus' apostles. Astronomical timetables are enumerated into 12 ages, which not only speaks to the 12 months of the solar year, but on a great cycle spanning almost 26,000 years. The age of Pisces began around 6 BC, which is why the latter parts of the Gospels refer often to fish. That said, most people have heard of Jesus Christ, considered the Messiah by Christians, but very few have heard of Sabbatai Zevi, who declared himself the Messiah in 1666. By proclaiming redemption was available through acts of sin. In Hebrew, Sabbatai means Saturn, and in Jewish tradition, the reign of Sabbatai, the highest planet, was often linked to the advent of the Messiah. Zevi was fascinated by mysticism and a student of the Lurianic Kabbalah, named after Isaac Luria, a leading rabbi and Jewish mystic who lived during the 1500s and is considered the father of the contemporary Kabbalah. While Sabbatai Zevi wasn't the only mystic to indulge in orgies, incest, and altered states of consciousness, he was extremely influential in the 17th century, and his legacy was carried on into other faiths as well after his conversion to Islam, where he and his followers continued their esoteric religion covertly. There are other elements in Christianity that have precedent in earlier pagan or Kabbalistic archetypes, such as the Virgin Mary, which in an esoteric context represents what in Jewish mysticism is known as the Shekinah, which translates to the divine presence of God, in this case the divine feminine aspect, as understood by the alchemists or in the mystery school religions of Europe that were extensions of the Knights Templar, such as the Rosicrucians or Freemasons. Sabbatai Zevi's successor was Jacob Frank, who declared his daughter Eva to be the Messiah and encouraged the worship of the Black Madonna as an esoteric extension of the ancient goddess religion. Of course, this does not represent skin color, but is symbolic. Frank was instrumental in the creation of the Illuminati, along with Adam Weishaupt and Amschel Rothschild. I expand on both Sabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank's influence on the modern world in my book 1666, Redemption Through Sin. Moloch is Saturn by another name, and is most known as the dark aspect of the sun god that demanded child sacrifices, consumed by a furnace in his belly. While this grotesque practice is no longer performed openly, it has been claimed that rituals associated with the ancient religion, on which our modern annual traditions are loosely based, still continue in secret, and by those in the highest echelons of power.